you check the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Bienvenidos, Fright fans, and welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Jaime and Fuego with a special Patreon review. Yes, it is finally into the new year, 2022, and we are trying to finally get caught up with these. They do tend to pile up around the holidays, and then unfortunately myself and a couple other members of the crew came down with Captain Trip. So yes, we are finally getting to some of these, and I'm going to be doing a few solos. So obviously, thank you so very much to all who support us on Patreon. It is supremely appreciated. And this is actually for the December poll winner, and we are talking 1976's Burnt Offerings. Now, there was a trend in horror, most notably in like the mid to late 70s, where like the whole supernatural, haunted, housey kind of thing was most definitely becoming a thing. Stuff like the Amityville Horror, obviously, and various others. I think The Omen would probably be considered into this sort of an evil person, possessed person, demonic home, or possessed person, Exorcist that come a few years before, obviously. So this is one that I had never heard of, actually. Stars Karen Black, and she is a mother who moves to this home along with her husband and with her, I think he's 12-year-old son. And yet this home that they move into, there is something seemingly suspicious about it. And the first red flag that you get when this family, the father of which being a writer, it seems like in the mid to late 70s, whether it was Stephen King or whether it was, a lot of movies or whatever, there was a lot of writers finding their way into these like evil homes of sorts. But the aforementioned red flag is the fact that the siblings, who are very quirky and a little bit strange, who own this place, are essentially trying to get a caretaker for this home. And they're like, so it's going to be $900, and the family is like, we can't afford $900 a month. And they're like, no, $900 for the entire summer. You get to live here, and you just have to maintain the upkeep. But the catch is that there's also an elderly woman. I'm trying to remember if she is the aunt of the two siblings or the mother of the two siblings, but she is a relative that has to stay there, and she appreciates her privacy. And so they're supposed to like leave meals at her door, and yet there is kind of a seeming fascination and connection that Karen Black's character as the mother gets with not just the woman specifically, and it's kind of like a behind closed doors sort of thing, but also just with the history of the house, as she discovers like these portraits and stuff, presumed previous people who had lived there and like taken care of the place, or maybe their relatives, whatever. But this film is very much of its time, not just in the acting, but in the score, and also the fact that at least something like The Omen had gore, and at least something like The Exorcist had significant shock factor with, like puking split pea soup and all that different shizzle. But this one is really just a methodical slow burn, and more so than horror, it just deals with like the brooding, I guess, psychological, like, is somebody possessed? Is the entire family being taken over by whatever weird presence dwells within this house? And I guess the unique aspect is that when negative things kind of start to happen around the home, whether it's the father just briefly kind of losing his head and like almost drowning their son in the pool, and various other things, the home starts to kind of rebuild itself at various points when these sort of energies become apparent. And so when that is transpiring, it's just kind of odd in that regard. And so it really, with the exception of these dreamy flashbacks that the husband has about the funeral of his own mother, this weird like chauffeur driver kind of guy who is mad creepy with this big like evil smile reminds me a little bit of Charlie Manx, actually, from Nosferatu, at least in like the hat and how he's done up and like the old school car that he's rolling around in. So some of those bits with him are at least creepy, but they only manifest themselves here and there. There's another funeral scene after there is a loss of a family member that is also staying along with them in the film that kind of adds some emotional gravitas. But really, this film doesn't become particularly interesting, at least for me, until the very end. And that's where it does finally morph into full-fledged horror film, goes for broke with a few things that it's doing, and it does actually have a rather satisfying ending, and it's on the darker side of things, which I definitely appreciated. But performances are fine, but once again, this is still very much of that mid to like creeping into the late 70s where horror and just a lot of acting in general was still taking itself incredibly seriously, and with Burnt Offerings, definitely no exception in that regard. I think it was directed by Dan Curtis, if I remember correctly, and he did like the original Dark Shadows television series and some of the, I think, made-for-TV, like movie spin-off sort of things that they did. So not a lot of theatrical expertise, but still decently shot, and not bad, but it wasn't really heralded by critics as being amazing when it initially came out. And I don't know. Some people, as I was reading a little bit on it, and like Wikipedia and a few Reddit posts and stuff, they say that people should give it a second try because it's commentary on the death of the middle class and, you know, the dissolution of family and stuff. I don't really know if that subtext was intentional. I mean, people can glean whatever they want when they're analyzing this sort of film, but no, it's a haunted house story. That's really about as far as I can say. Not bad, but definitely nothing memorable, nothing that I would particularly recommend. And initially, through like the first 2/3 of this, I was wondering if the patron people were trolling us, you know, with this being the poll winner. I don't know what else were possibilities for December. But yeah, if you're a fan of this just era of horror and a very slow burn where it's more just kind of eerie and creepy at times and like full-fledged scares like we veered into in the late 70s and 80s, obviously, give it a chance. But otherwise, I don't know, it's free on Daily Motion. That's where I checked it out. Otherwise, you'll have to spend a VOD rental fee. So thanks once again to everybody who voted in the December poll. And if you would like to become a patron yourself and recommend something like Burnt Offerings or pretty much anything else that tickles your proverbial frightening fancy, there is information in the link below if you want to support us, help us keep the lights on. Supremely appreciated. And yeah, Fright fans, that's gonna do it. I've been Fuego, y'all have been Rat Status, and remember, until next time, to stay scared.